As one of the longest running animated shows in TV history, Spongebob Squarepants is a show that, despite having long running success, it has been criticised in recent times as suffering the effects of time. Like we've seen with many other shows that established themselves just before the turn of the century, 23 years later, what made this show so good and the boundaries that it pushed seem to no longer be as present. One thing about the early days of SpongeBob was the creepy episodes that you could often find yourself being petrified of as a young child. And one of those ones, and the episode that I feel lingers in my mind the most from my childhood, is from season 1, titled Rock Bottom. So it got me thinking, why? Why did an episode in a kid show scare me so much? A show that never normally made me feel like that and often made me feel happier emotions. Well, I thought I'd break down and explain why Rock Bottom is SpongeBob's creepiest episode. Spoilers will be in this video, so you've been warned. I rewatched Rock Bottom for the purpose of this video, and one thing that immediately jumped out to me was the way in which the episode started and provided a polar contrast in terms of the setting and environment. The episode opened up with SpongeBob and Patrick leaving Glove World, a theme park in which they'd spent an enjoyable time at. They were happy and speaking about how much fun they had. So from the off, we were led to believe that the episode would be the aftermath of a fun time, a place where we would have most likely wanted to go as kids. There was even funny moments from the off. We had the running gag of the balloon constantly hitting the bus driver as SpongeBob was trying to find his change, the showing each other the souvenirs that they got and the laughter that they were sharing, luring us into a false sense of security and making us feel as though it was going to be a humorous episode. However, within the space of a couple of minutes, one of the largest fears that you have as a child became present within the episode. Being lost, not recognizing the area, being alone, and not knowing how to get home. Something which as a child was a genuine thing that was possible, and a fear that was present within every single one of us. As kids, you don't have a phone, and you don't have GPS, at least back then anyway, so it was a genuine fear that many people would have. The brightness of Glove World and Bikini Bottom was the complete opposite to the darkness that was present at the bottom of Rock Bottom, and it really captured the mood, tone, and fear that the writers wanted us to feel when watching. Another element of this episode that made it so creepy was certain elements of the area that SpongeBob found himself in. Everything and everybody around him was unrecognizable, and he'd never seen anything like it before. Words were distinctly similar, but instead of finishing with the letter S, it had a harsh Z. A letter that isn't often used in words and is a lot harsher to pronounce than an S. Something which is very subtle but does provide a sense of uncomfortableness. Even the people of Rock Bottom were very different to what we had seen in the show before. Even though the usual residents of Bikini Bottom were creatures from the sea, there were human characteristics about them. Normally they had 2 eyes, a mouth, a nose, arms and legs. Plus, they would speak a language that was distinguishable. The creatures that were within Rock Bottom were alien. They were a lot larger than the ones that we were used to seeing in the show, and they didn't really exhibit the friendly human characteristics that we came to be familiar with in the show. Grunting, growling, and showing no human-like behavior, all making the sense of feeling lost in a strange place even more present. The final thing in the world that instilled fear within the viewer was the fact that Rock Bottom was quite literally right at the bottom, even more bottom than Bikini Bottom. The fact that it was a sheer drop at a 90-degree angle that looked as though it was several hundreds of feet below what would have been SpongeBob's normal surface showed that there was no sense of escape and only entrapment. When they travelled down the drop, it looked like a speedy, traumatic experience, with the art style being exaggerated and allowing us to see that his entire body felt the wrath of going below the surface level at that speed, something which was also delved into further when we saw SpongeBob trying to run up it but failing constantly, enhancing the feeling of entrapment and making you feel as though he was never going to be going home. There was no way out, and that was something that was made extremely clear. The world that was established in Rock Bottom was something that played on the fear of being lost and was a main reason as to why this episode was so creepy as a child. Because nobody wanted to be lost from their parents, especially in a strange place. So this episode did a great job at bringing that fear to the forefront. Another main thing that this episode did so differently to the others and added to the creepy nature of it was that it provided a sense of hope, and then it constantly took it away. Almost playing on the fact that SpongeBob was scared and that he wanted to leave, but they weren't allowing him to. There was one way out of Rock Bottom, and the enemy in this episode was the bus. Rather than having a bus that was never going to arrive, which is most likely the traditional route that a show would go down when it comes to being trapped and would make for an episode that continued the creepy space to be explored, this time it wasn't needed. We already knew how creepy the area was. Instead, they did the opposite. They provided a bus, an element of hope that was constantly arriving, but SpongeBob was constantly missing it, and it was almost personal. We really felt the frustration that was present within SpongeBob and the fact that no matter how long he was waiting for the bus, the moment that he stepped away, the bus would come. Even when he was hungry, he lost the candy bar from the machine because it was taken by a resident of Rock Bottom, showing that SpongeBob was suffering in every way possible, and there wasn't an ounce of him that was content. The final thing in this episode that added to the haunting nature that was present throughout the entirety of it was when the light switched off and the world just went dark. We thought that Rock Bottom was dark when he first arrived, but we saw that it was possible for it to be darker than pure darkness. And with that came a noise in the dark. Another fear that people have when they're younger is the fear of the dark, and that was something that was sprinkled at the end of this episode. We saw a sense of panic come over SpongeBob as the noise got louder, closer, and the score in the background increased, making us as the viewer feel more and more uncomfortable. It ultimately finished off with SpongeBob running into a vertical drop with a terrifying image of him being wounded by the impact. This was the end of the terrifying nature of the episode, and from that moment on, we saw that his balloon was able to take him back to his home in Bikini Bottom. This episode, Rock Bottom, was one that stuck with me over the years, and despite being older now and realizing that it's not as creepy and scary as what it was when I was younger, I can definitely see why the younger version of myself felt extremely uncomfortable when watching it. One of the largest fears that you have when you're younger is the fear of being lost and alone in a strange place, and not being able to get back. And another fear that you also have too is the fear of the dark. Something else which was present in this episode too. It was like a nightmare. Being lost and being in complete darkness is a sinister theme to have in an episode for a show that usually evokes happiness, laughter, is bright, and makes me feel relaxed when watching. So it's definitely understandable as to why this could quite comfortably be the creepiest episode of SpongeBob for many people out there. I've not watched SpongeBob in years, but like I said at the start, it's apparently taken a decline and isn't what it once used to be, which is sad. But this episode from season 1 is a prime example of what made shows, even kid shows, so good back in the day. There's not many episodes of kid shows that you're still talking about many years later, but this is definitely one of them. It was a creepy ride for sure. So, there you have it, the creepiest episode of SpongeBob. If you want to see more videos such as endings explained, theories and predictions, and character breakdowns, then click on the I button, or alternatively you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you'd like to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review, then head over to my Twitter, @brainpilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What was your creepiest episode? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.